Good evening. I'm Paul Martin. I'm a member of the task force, and I've got to say that I am very proud of what the task force has done. And I wish that I could be with you tonight, celebrating the launch of our report and the recommendations for the development of the impact investment marketplace in Canada.
I'm Ronald Cohen. I'm sitting in London. I'm sorry I can't be with you in Toronto on the occasion of the publication of your task force report on social finance. I've followed the development of social finance in Canada over several years. I've addressed one of these meetings by video link before, and I warmly applaud the recommendations of the task force. You put together a very powerful and eminent task force, and their recommendations are spot on in my view.
Good evening. My name is Judith Roden, and I'm the president of the Rockefeller Foundation. I'm so glad to be with you today to launch the task force report on social finance, if only by video.
Hi, I'm Catherine Fulton. I'm speaking to you from San Francisco, and I'm the co-author of a report that Monitor put out in 2009 on impact investing. I'm also one of the founding board members of the Global Impact Investing Network that is based in New York. When we put this report out, we believed and still believe in the great potential of impact investing to be one of the great social innovations of the early 21st century.
Impact investing offers a new tool to match the scale and complexity of the 21st century's challenges with the ingenuity and efficiency required to build a more equitable and resilient world.
That's why it's so important to see how we can get the benefits of an investment mindset into social issues, how we can direct more flows of finance from not just commercial ventures, but to ventures which can combine social, commercial and environmental goals in the way they operate and the way they account for how they operate. And I'm confident that Canada will have a great deal to teach the world about how to do this really well.
Canada has a long history of engagement in community economic development, social enterprise, and a variety of innovative blending of business and community practice and interest. What it has lacked is an enabling environment to really support and advance this work to another level. And the recommendations of the task force really offer a framework that government, business, and community people could work around in order to advance this work more significantly within Canada.
Only with a powerful system can we hope to provide social entrepreneurs with the same resources that business entrepreneurs can use and deal with the very significant social issues that our society faces.
The Rockefeller Foundation has been leading efforts to catalyze the impact investing market, building the infrastructure, collaborative networks, and demand-side opportunities to unleash the flow of private capital for double bottom-line returns.
Private investors are always looking for an edge. They're looking for opportunities to invest in areas where perhaps the rest of the market hasn't seen an opportunity. And that really is what's represented today by impact investing. It's not a question of charitable giving, it's a question of really using a new insight, a new lens to complement what are really fundamental investing practices that have proven successful in the mainstream markets.
Here in the UK, we have started to talk to the Charity Commission about issuing guidelines that say that prudent trustees would allocate a percentage of the assets of their foundations or charitable trusts to investment in social finance. Down the line, I believe that we will need similar regulations for pension funds.
There are investors out there with a deep social consciousness who want to invest in social initiatives. And what we have to do is to connect them with social entrepreneurs working on solving social and environmental issues.
I believe if we can manage to implement changes of regulation of this kind, that they will be as momentous as the changes were for venture capital when in 1978 the United States changed the Prudent Man Rule, which was part of the ERISA legislation. Following that, we saw a marketplace which had received dribbles of finance from the private sector move to becoming an institutional asset class.
Nobody can know for sure how big this market will be, but we believe it could be as large as $500 billion.
We applaud and encourage the approach adopted by the task force, and more generally, the groundbreaking efforts now underway in Canada.
There are plenty of people, thousands of them, doing this around the world so far, but it's not going to become mainstream unless you take the advice and adopt the recommendations of your task force on social finance in Canada.
I wish you every success in your efforts, and we are always there to support you in any way we can.
We at the Rockefeller Foundation are proud to collaborate with such a forward-thinking group of people, and we wish you tremendous success.
I believe that through the task force's report and its clearly articulated recommendations, the task force has created the framework for success. But you must act now to see them realized. Thank you.
Hi there. My name is Allyson Hewitt. I'm the Director of Social Entrepreneurship and Director of SIG at Mars, or Social Innovation Generation. It's nice to see you all again. That video was prepared for the launch of the Social Finance Task Force, which took place on December the 1st here at the Mars Discovery District. There are copies of the recommendations out there, and they'll be available for the networking session as well. But I wanted to just tell you a little bit about what we were trying to do. We're trying to figure out how you mobilize access to capital for those engaged in social purpose work. So traditionally, people think about charities, they think about donations, they think about grants. Well, we think there's a new way to do it. We think we can free up a lot more access to capital. And for people who want to make money and make a difference, we've got to find ways to finance that. So that's what this task force was about. We had some pretty high profile folks. You saw Paul Martin was on it, Sam Dubach. It was chaired by Ilse Trunick, who is our CEO here at Mars. And I'm really happy to chat with anybody about this. If you'd like a full copy of the report, it's on socialfinance.ca. But please pick up a copy of the recommendations, and if I can be so bold, I'd love to ask you to endorse them as well. We're looking for a whole series of endorsements. We're really trying to build a movement of social finance in this country. So what are we going to use that money for? We're going to use that money to support social entrepreneurs, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So I'd like to call up our guests for this evening. Christine Ho, who is with Well of Change, Oliver Madison, who is with Me to We, and Amy Coupal, who is with Curriculum Services Canada. And we're going to be having a bit of a chat. This is really great, and I'm really, really glad you came. I was worried I thought you'd all be out like doing last minute shopping or something, or last minute shopping like me is probably, on the 24th, right? But I'm really glad that you came. And I also want to remind you that we're going to hit the ground running right when you come back in the new year. So on Wednesday, January the 5th, we have Murray Hogarth, who was Brampton's Entrepreneur of the Year. And he's a pretty interesting guy, and you'll see there's posters upstairs. It's going to talk about his Lived It lecture. So get ready to hit the ground running in the new year in January 5th, 2011. So I wanted y'all to say that. So now we're going to start off with a bunch of questions. Hi, did you guys get you some water? So you all know me from Mars, but I actually had another life before Mars. There is life before Mars, not just life on Mars. Previous to this, I was at Sick Kids, where I ran a national injury prevention program, tried to advocate for kids across the country. But prior to that, for 10 years, I ran a program called Community Information Toronto, where my social innovation was 211, which is 3-digit access to human service information. So that was an idea I had about how do people, particularly new Canadians, gain access to the whole range of services that are available in the city. They don't know where to start, but they know 911 and they know 411. So managed to get 211 implemented in Toronto, and now it's spread across Canada and in fact North America. I feel like I should wear an AA hat, but I too am a social entrepreneur. I've been working in the nonprofit and for-profit sectors for some time. I actually started when I was 12. My home economics teacher and I ran a breakfast program for other kids in the school. So this is who I am as part of my identity. And the first time I spoke to a group like this, people came up to me afterwards and said, "Oh my God, I'm a social entrepreneur too." It's like one of those moments, because people just need language for wanting to make money and make a difference. So welcome, social entrepreneurs. So Amy, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your organization?
Sure, and I can really relate to what you're talking about because I feel like this is sort of a coming out process, and certainly for me personally and for our organization, developing a sense of identity around social entrepreneurship and being an enterprising not-for-profit has been sort of a voyage of self-discovery even after the organization was well established and in place. So I think it's in the hearts and minds and activities of many people, including I'm sure everyone here in this room, but you don't always have words and terminology to really characterize that, so that's exciting. So I'm Amy Coupal. I'm the Executive Director of Curriculum Services Canada, which is a not-for-profit, as well as the Curriculum Foundation, which is our charitable affiliate. And we work in the education sector, but that's a fairly broad definition because we say that we do work wherever learning is taking place. So that includes in a more traditional K-12 context, as well as in the workplace, as well as in communities, and in all of the world's classrooms, because today learning is happening in many non-traditional venues, online, in different face-to-face contexts, and we support that in a variety of ways. And if you're interested in talking more about that, as a social entrepreneur, I'm always happy to chat. But it's been an exciting journey for us. The organization has been in place since 1999, and I took over as executive director in January 2009. So it's been a fun time, coming up on 2 years, and really excited about where we're heading with this new sense of identity that we have, and moving through a transition of being an organization that from year to year has always had to work towards meeting our budget requirements and our operational needs, and moving into an era of sustainability and continued growth. So I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along.
Terrific. Oliver.
Well, I'm Oliver Madison, and founded Me to We Style. I guess this takes us back to December 2005, almost to the day, actually, to today. So I think tomorrow's our 5-year anniversary.
Okay.
I perhaps took a slightly different route, and I may be under attack here. I started off in that social give back area of investment banking, and then moved to private equity, which was no less of a give back, and somehow ended up in this space. And Me to We Style, we'll focus on that, not on me. That's for therapy later. But Me to We Style itself is an apparel business. But we wanted to set up a business. Really what we wanted to do is Free the Children is a charity that builds schools around the world. They have alternative income programs, clean water programs, great stuff. Except some time ago they had a bit of a problem, and that was really revenue visibility. Other things would come up. They needed a source of revenue to ensure they could keep, train, and develop the great people they had and that were interested in working for them. Except how do you do that in a way other than pure donations? And over a commiseration lunch, which is where you're honest enough to share how you really feel, but not close enough to follow up too regularly, Mark Kilberger, who was the executive director, and I at the time, said, wouldn't it be great if we could do that and solve that problem and build a business at the same time? And that's when we came up with the model of setting up a for-profit business, so a little bit different from Amy, where 50% of our profits were donated back to Free the Children. And of course we said, well, donating profits isn't enough. What else can we do to make the business socially responsible? And the other two key categories we came up with were environmental and social. So on the environmental side, Me to We Style focuses on eco-friendly fabrics, environmentally friendly packaging, or lack thereof, or lack of packaging. We focus on, through our charity partner, we have a program where for every item that we sell, we plant a tree, et cetera, green marketing materials, and so on. And the third category, the social side, we said, well, we can't have an environmentally friendly business that gives back to a charity that doesn't actually address the issue of how workers are treated. Because for those of you who know a bit about the apparel business, there's a small number of people at the top who do well, and there's a huge number of people who pick the cotton, who spin the yarn, who dye the fabrics, and so on, who often aren't the beneficiaries of a brand exploding and becoming popular. So in order to do that, we decided, at least at the beginning, to manufacture in Canada as much as possible. In addition to which, we had our entire supply chain certified or socially audited by the Fair Trade Labeling Organization. And that really hit those three categories: social, environmental, and charity. That's it.
Great.
My name is Christine Ho, and I'm from Wild Change. I'm the executive director and one of the co-founders. When we started Wild Change, it was really just a problem that we really had ourselves. And the idea was to find alternate ways for people to be able to give back, not just volunteering your time or giving donations, but finding new ways for people to give back to their favorite organization. And so what Well Change is, we're an online platform or a marketplace where people buy and sell goods and skills, but the difference is all the items are actually donated. So it could be a guitar or it could be your own skill set. So for example, I know Amy went to Japan, so the idea is she could actually volunteer her time to teach Japanese class maybe, and all over here might be able to purchase that, and for $20 that money raised would go back to their favorite charity. And so the idea was to create a systematic way, a very different and new way to be able to tap a resource that's otherwise not used. So I would say very rarely right now, she probably doesn't use her Japanese skills, let's say. But I think there's a lot of really great resources that people have that they don't think about. The first place to give back to an organization isn't just your checkbook. There's a lot of really great ways to give back. And so when I started, it was I wanted to give back utilizing my skill sets, and I wanted to teach a computer or a Photoshop class. But there was no volunteer opportunity that really matched my skills. And so we decided, okay, well, what if I sold that, made $100, and then I donated that to the charity? Well, that's actually a lot more productive way of being able to give back, not only on a very short stint, because I only volunteer that 1 hour, but it's very impactful because it's exactly what I'm good at, exactly my skill set, and I'm able to provide back, in a very important way for the charity, which is, at the end of the day, resources and funds are always tight, so a new way to be able to fundraise. So that's it.
Great. Can you all hear us all okay? The mic's working? Okay, good. Okay, so Christine, I think I heard you say that you were responding to a need, right? And that's the same as all entrepreneurs. They sort of respond to a need. Why did you decide to set it up the way you did? Why did you decide to go the route of social venture?
You know what, we didn't. We didn't specifically go out looking to start a business. It really started with the problem and thinking, how do we address this problem, not only for myself, but if I can now create an online platform where other people can donate their skills, then not only am I empowering myself, but now I can empower all the 200 people in the room to be able to give back in their own way. One of the big things about starting a business, it's not just about wanting to start with a good idea. It's really having a specific problem that you want to address so that you have the customers there that you're able to service. And for us, it wasn't just about, I want to create a cool social enterprise. I want to solve a problem, and the problem really stemmed from myself and an issue that I personally had at the beginning.
So Amy, you're more of what we would call a social intrapreneur. You're working within an established organization to try to bring about change. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, like I said, the organization has been around for some time and has been through its own evolution because it actually started initially as an arm's length agency of the government. And then the government kind of said, okay, we're finished with you, so you can go off in the world and shut things down or do whatever works for you. And it's been very much an evolutionary process. So the organization has evolved from a very single service orientation directly for government to a service organization that serves still government agencies and federal and municipal and provincial jurisdictions, but also other organizations that have needs around online learning, around curriculum and resource development, and in particular around standards, because that's really what we focus on is standards in education, standards for delivery of materials, instruction, that kind of thing. And so it's sort of been driven by that original set of roots around the standards and the work with the government, but we've had to get pretty creative about how we generate revenue and how we sustain the organization because of that sort of cutting of the umbilical cord, so to speak, and going out into the world. So I would say the previous executive director who worked with the organization for 10 years really did that initial stage of work around being a social entrepreneur. And that includes lots of nonlinear work. You have to be able to sort of follow the energy and the opportunities where they emerge, and that still is taking place today, no question. Doing lots of pioneering, and trying to say, we actually think we see a need here that others may not yet perceive. So it's a little bit of a contrast to other people's experiences in that regard. Sometimes you need to help people to see the need that they may not be able to see, or create a context in which that may be well served. And going through a process of learning as you go and working on the fly. You have to be able to do that. So for me personally, my process has been about sort of maintaining that same spirit, but working with an organization that is established and going through that transition process from social entrepreneur in more of an individual sense to social enterprise in more of a collective sense. And really looking at the whole organization and how do you develop and foster a team through that process, and how do you set up policies and procedures and infrastructure and support for the team in order to be able to do that. So for me, that's about lots of reflection. It's about a lot of work with the team in terms of collaboration, getting the right people to the table to collaborate, and knowing when to take control, because you know that it's really important that something happens in a certain way, and knowing when to empower and trust other people to go out and do it themselves. And that's, for me personally, a really tough balancing act in terms of having this real sense of how I think things should be and how I want them to be, and yet knowing that if this is going to really evolve as our organization needs to, I have to trust that the right people are at the table, that they have all sorts of vision and capability themselves, and that my job is actually to ensure that the conditions exist for them to do that. And so I put a lot of time and thought and energy into that, making sure that they have the resources that they need, the time that they need, the support that they need, and that they know I have their back in doing that. And sometimes that means backing them up on things that they've done differently than I would have. But that's sort of the process for me, is very much about the relationship piece and working with people and doing things as a team to set up an enterprise that can grow and evolve itself.
Great. So Oliver, did you make a conscious choice to come to the light?
I'd like to argue I've never left the light, but I think for me it was, I believe in business. I mean, we're set up as a for-profit, we have share capital. If you were to argue with me and say, why aren't you set up as a nonprofit, which is a question we do get, my answer to that is, if we're good at what we do, having share capital can allow us to grow significantly faster by raising capital externally, which incidentally we did with Participant Media, a film production company in California that produces An Inconvenient Truth, Charlie Wilson's War, a bunch of others. We're able to grow that much faster, and the faster we grow, the sooner we can have a positive impact on our charity partner. So I don't think, I believed in business and still do, and at the same time I believed in charity, and I was tired of hearing people on one side say, business is the root of all evil. I'm happy to argue that one straight through to the morning. On the other side, I was tired of hearing about how charities are wasteful. In some cases, sure, that is true. That's true both in business and charity. There's others, like Free the Children, where 91 cents of every dollar donated goes right to the end goal. And that's something I think deserves to be celebrated. So what was the end goal in creating what we did? We hope to create a platform that over time others would emulate, that would show people that you can use business to help support charity. The two are not mutually exclusive but can be used together. And over time, hopefully, other people will set up similar enterprises, increasing the amount of capital available to charities. More capital available for charities hopefully will mean more competition for that capital by those charities, and those charities will become more efficient by having to meet certain criteria to get access to that capital. Not handouts, but actual capital that comes through business. So that was our hope. That's why I would argue we've never left the light. We're still doing everything we did before. We're maximizing profits. We're just trying not to do it at human expense and at the expense of the environment. But that's something, there's a lot of for-profit businesses out there who are doing exactly the same thing.
Yeah, and so what we're finding in the work that we do, I was just being facetious, but really is trying to create opportunities for people, no matter where they are situated, from a traditional charity to a traditional for-profit to think about how they blend their value propositions a little bit more. You heard Jed Emerson on the value. His entire organization is about blended value. And who says you can only sort of do good, this sort of traditional charity handout approach, or who says you can only make money and not give back? You have to do both. For sustainability of the planet, for financial sustainability, we have to begin to think differently about the opportunities to create those synergies, and more and more people doing it. We're trying to accelerate that whole process. So completely support that.
Well, just one point to throw in there. If I were talking to, say, a pure business audience, I would argue there's actually a business case for what we do, because by doing some of the environmental, social, and other components that we do, we're better able to differentiate ourselves. We're probably able to keep a higher margin over a sustained period of time. We're better able to generate loyalty in our customers, and we make it tougher for competitors to enter the market and take market share away from us once we have it. So there's both a business case and a social case. And it's not one or the other. What I love about this is that the two coexist peacefully and are not competing. It's not a zero-sum game where one's competing at the expense of the other.
So do you think you have all the skills? Like when you launched into this venture coming from, what was the learning like for you? Did you think you had the skills to run this kind of an organization?
Absolutely not. We faked it for quite a while. So the only piece of wisdom I had was from my grandfather, who was much older than his generation would have been. So I was young, probably 9 years old, and I remember he had been in the apparel trade at one point, and I remember him shaking a crooked finger at me, telling me, "Don't trust anybody." And it's probably affected a lot of my relationships since. But
this is the therapy part, right?
Right, exactly. We're going to share. This is great. Captive audience. But so really, we entered the market saying we know that we don't have all the skills, and I think danger for any businesses or for any person is hubris, arrogant pride when you think you know everything. So we know right now that there's a lot left to learn. There's a lot to learn about organizational behavior, about how to run sales teams, about how to be more efficient in operations, all of those things. We focus on those. One of the ways that we did learn, however, is by a method which a famous investor, Philip Fisher, coined, and he called it scuttlebutt, where you go and you talk to the suppliers and to the customers and to all of those people around that industry. And it's those people who, over time, really taught us the business, or the key pieces of what we needed to know. And then, a little bit of intuition and a lot of pleading and begging for information. And one thing after another leads to the info you need. We founded this in December 2005. That's when we came up with the name, the basic idea. We knew which direction we were going in. Realistically, it took about 1 year and 4 months for us to be comfortable to truly launch at a trade show with a catalog, with product, with everything else. We were doing little things along the way, but we needed 1 year and a bit in order to ensure that we set up a sustainable supply chain. I don't just mean sustainable environmentally or socially. I mean a supply chain where we won't be held hostage to one supplier once we do get going. We needed time to find the right people, to ensure the team gelled together, to ensure that all of the things that could go wrong had a chance to go wrong before we put it out there in a much bigger way. And then, we're trying to avoid falling flat on our face when the first large order comes through and can we do it? Can we handle the volume we can generate? And that was a big issue always.
That's great. Christine, did you want to reflect on the skill sets, what you're uncovering as a startup?
Well, definitely when we started, we didn't have the intent on starting a full business. And so for the first 3 months, all we did was actually go and talk to experts, figure out what we thought the problem was. And we did our pitch 200 times to 200 different people. And every single person that gave us new advice, they were people either from the charity sector, someone from the business side, someone just from the online tech side. And so by getting advice from so many different people, and I think that's an advantage that we had, we are a nonprofit, we're looking to, give back to the community, and one of the great goals was that, we actually had a lot of people that came to support us as well. We definitely didn't have all the skills that we needed. So finding the information was one thing, and learning about the market. But the other was the specific skill set. So it was myself and Kevin were the co-founders, but we had a lot of volunteers come to us. And the goal was to have people that were smarter, better, and able to produce things that were much better than I could ever do. So the first time was, we started, this is 2009 is when we started, and September of last year is when we got together our first team. And we had 10 people, they're all tech, architects, senior graphic designers, all these people. In fact, myself and Kevin were the only people on the team that did not have masters in something. And so we were the most junior, which is funny enough, but it was, getting together a good team was really, really important. But what we learned was that people that are part-time in terms of volunteers wasn't a good fit for our organization. And so we couldn't create the site with these 10 people. And what we did was we scrapped the site and we recreated it a second time. And when we did that, we actually decided to be a little bit pickier on the skill sets and the people that we brought on board. So we only took on volunteers that could work with us full-time. And one of the challenges when you're working on a nonprofit and you have limited resources is that you want to be able to leverage volunteers that come to you, but at the same time, it's very time consuming to be able to manage a lot of volunteers on a part-time basis. I'm going to come in for one day and come and help you. It's very challenging. No matter what organization you are, there's a ramp-up time and there's a training time. And so what we did, we were a lot pickier, and we decided to only work with volunteers that could commit a short stint of time, but on a full-time basis, and actually come into the office and help work with us and actually develop the site. And that was a learning experience for us. We thought the more the merrier, but at sometimes you grow too big, and it's more challenging to actually communicate and get the word across. So volunteers are great. You just got to figure out how to manage them, and that was a really big learning experience for myself.
Well, given all the work you do with volunteers, it's a bit of walk the talk stuff, right? So that's really great. So I'm going to ask Amy the same question, but I want to give you a heads up that we're really looking forward to some interactive discussion from the audience. So if you do have a question, if you could please go to the mic, that would be terrific. And we're going to be sticking around for the networking session, but we're hoping you'll join in as well. So Amy, would you like to reflect on the skills that you needed to do your job?
Well, I would sort of echo some of the comments that have already been made. I would have never said I had the skills required. In fact, everything for me happened very much by happenstance. There wasn't a whole ton of design in terms of my career path. I'm a former teacher, and I got into this whole game because I'm passionate about education. And so for me, the driver was actually doing something that I felt strongly about and that I thought was interesting. And my philosophy has always been, do work that you think has meaning and has impact in the community, and the support and the resources and your own income will follow. And for me, that experience has happened. Mm-hmm. And so I've learned skills along the way, usually in more of a just-in-time kind of pattern. And so for me, one of the things that's been extremely important is good mentors and good consultants. And whether you're starting up a business in whatever type of incorporation it might be, or wherever your business is in its own development and life cycle, having people who have skill sets and expertise that you do not possess, I think is really, really critical. And so one example I would give for me in my current role in this organization is around HR. We have 13 full-time staff. We have hundreds of freelancers that we work with, and that's been really critical to our success, and a model that's worked for us is to have a small core staff, but have a core stable of pre-selected, highly skilled individuals that we can call on depending on the projects that come up for us, because everything we do is project-based. We write proposals, we build our networks, and we do the business that comes. And so we can't have 50 people or more on staff sitting around and waiting. We need the people who are there in the office busy, and then be able to expand and contract and also pull in the skill sets that we need over time. So that has been really important, is having someone who can help work with us around the full-time staffing as well as the contract management and how you work with subcontractors and freelancers and that kind of thing. And whether it's that or any of the other people that have supported me, whether that's been in a consulting or mentorship role, that's been what has helped me develop my skills over time. Because usually what happens is you're hitting one of those walls and you think, I don't know how to do this, and I have to stand up in front of a group and talk about it tomorrow, or whatever the case may be. And having good people around you and recognizing that you have a skill set or a passion in whatever area you're working in, but that you need other supports, I think is really, really critical. And be prepared to learn. One of the things that we've done as part of our ongoing self-identification as an organization is we call ourselves a learning organization, which is by no means my term, well established in literature and business practice. And so that means we can have conversations and we can say to each other with total integrity, I don't know, do you? And so that means it's never been required of me to have all of the skills in all of the things that need to be done. I can ask questions, I can give contributions where I do have skills and knowledge and ability, but I don't have to have all the answers myself. And for me, the number one driver then becomes the passion for the work, that if I don't know, I'll figure it out, or I'll find someone who can. And I think that's been really, really important. The other piece that I just wanted to say about that is the need to innovate. And this sort of goes beyond your question of skill set, but I think that, you know, what you've heard from the other two people here, and I would echo here, is you have to be prepared to try things. So maybe the skill or the quality is adaptability. You have to be able to try and say that worked or it didn't, and here's how we want to change it again. Or that may have worked for us when we were an organization of this size or with this focus, but our organization, and I think these as well, has evolved significantly over time. It's not the same organization it was 2 years ago, let alone 5 or 10. And so you have to be prepared to innovate and bring new processes and people and strategies in the mix.
Absolutely. Does anybody have any questions? Great.
My question is about the financing when you start up your venture. How did you get the finance, and how did you manage the cash flow in those first year of operation?
Is that to all of them?
Yeah, to all of them.
Go ahead, Oliver.
Sure. I think that's a great question. That's probably one of the toughest things for any business. In our case, we did raise capital to start, but really it was funded primarily by the people who were involved initially in the business. So short answer, we self-funded to start. And what we tried to do, in our case, we have a product. We focused on working with people who prepaid for their goods as much as possible. So we offer discounts. We still do. Our business is really split into two areas. The part that you see, which is retail, which is a really difficult business because you make stuff, you spend money making it, you spend money marketing it, you hope it sells, then you're stuck with half of it, and you don't know what to do with it. On the flip side, the other part of our business is custom, and that's the part we focused on to start. And custom means going to places like Longo's, the new store in the TELUS building. All of their employees wear in that store Meet-A-Wee style clothing. TELUS does a day of service. RBC does Walk for Water. We work with all of these organizations, and with those people, we were able to go and say, so we set up the business model to be able to go and say, we need a 50% deposit, and we need the other 50% in 30 days, and in our case, most of our terms were 60 days or more. So we were able to finance growth because of the area of the business that we chose to focus on. If we had chosen to focus on the sexy t-shirt that makes it out into a fashion magazine, into a gift guide, that would have been a whole different story because we would have had to make it, put our hands together and pray that it sells. And that becomes very challenging. And if you're going to do that, I think, then you really need to give yourself enough time to be able to run losses for long enough before you see that curve change. And in that case, I think you need to raise external capital, and it's harder to bootstrap. But it depends on the business.
Christine?
We were self-funded as well. I think it's very important to make sure that you keep your burn rate really low. Be it, as cost effective as you can. Spend the money where you feel there's the biggest value. Don't spend time on, thousands of dollars on a website and a logo if you don't know what your core value is or what you're trying to deliver. So kind of really focusing on how do you want to spend your money and create the most impact, and keep your costs really low until you figure out the business model. Because as an entrepreneur, whether you're a social entrepreneur or a regular entrepreneur, your goal is to really make a profit before you run out of resources and time. So making sure that you keep your costs low is really important.
And for us, historically, it was actually a government grant that helped us to get started, and I think things have changed quite a bit in terms of what monies are available these days. But today, our focus is really on business development, and this has been part of our process as a not-for-profit, is actually to look at the concept of sales. So we look at, okay, if this is our budget, then what do we need in the funnel? And how are we going to do that? And we implemented things like Salesforce.com so that even though the people that we work with are skilled in different aspects of education, they needed to start to learn to talk about business development and about sales and about relationship management and about client management. And we needed to actually look at what's our sales process, what's our sales cycle. And again, here you're going to hear it from me again, we brought in a business development consultant who has an interest in education and a background in education, but whose skill set is around the business development piece and could teach us. And we've had some very interesting conversations in terms of, wow, this is uncomfortable for us. This takes us out of our comfort zone, but we know that we need to do that as a part of that sustainability piece. So for us, it's saying, yes, we are a not-for-profit, but when you have no core funding, you better think like a business. So when you talked earlier about creating a business case, well, we created a business case. We create a business case for everything we do. And when we write proposals for government RFPs or private business proposals or whatever it is, we look at our qualities, including being a not-for-profit, as part of our strategic advantage. So we say, we're a not-for-profit. We are trying to provide you with the most cost-effective service that we can for what your needs are. And you translate all of that into opportunity for your organization.
Very good. And just a plug for Salesforce.com, if you are a nonprofit charitable organization, they'll give you 10 free licenses. If you get really huge, you pay them lots of money, but you start with 10 free licenses. Yeah. Oh, sorry, there's someone.
Hi, my name is Matt McInnes from Centennial College. My question is funding related as well, and it's directed at Oliver. You had sort of implied that there's been external funding since inception, the Me to We. And I love the business model. Your business, you're not shy about it. You give half our profits to charity. And I agree with all your sort of observations about brand security, about your security in your market share, et cetera. My question is, how do you get past those hurdles that you're an apparel company, you're socially conscious, so presumably there's higher costs associated there, and you give away half your profits? How do you pitch that to investors?
I think you have to find like-minded investors, but at the end of the day, investors will typically invest for a return, but in some cases the return can be financial, and there's other aspects of a return. It might be access to a market they don't have, it might be other information and sort of in those things. And I think in this case we found a partner that was a good fit for us. Now, how do we get over those hurdles? You can still give away half your profits and look at what your return on equity is or your return on invested capital. And at the end of the day, if our business didn't generate a sufficient return, then we would have been all better off taking the money that went into this business, buying a treasury with it, and simply donating the interest every year to the charity. So we have those hurdles. What was the other part of your question? You mentioned how do we get over the giving away the half and the socially responsible part,
yeah,
right?
The socially responsible part.
So it's true. Our costs are higher than a sweatshop in Haiti, hypothetically. That said, being socially responsible doesn't mean that we ignore what the market price for something is. It doesn't mean we go to the market and we agree to pay double just because we want to be socially responsible. We have to be intelligent about the prices that we pay. We have to be conscious of them. And there's other ways to control for that. So what I mean by that is, in the apparel business, large-scale manufacturers may sell to a large-scale distributor, to a smaller distributor, to another distributor, to the end user. In our case, what we've done is we've cut out a lot of we knew our base costs would be higher, but we've cut out a lot of the middlemen in it by creating our own sales team and by reaching out to the end users themselves. That's meant that initially, we probably did not get the distribution that we could, but we believe over time that controlling those relationships in the last mile, knowing the customer, will be more valuable and allow us to maintain better customer loyalty over a period of years.
Thank you.
Hopefully that made sense.
Yeah, that's great.
I'm not sure.
I think that it's also important, I think, to emphasize the first point about finding the right kind of investors. Yeah. Again, going back to the videos, that whole sort of impact investor space, and it's really about people who have patient capital. It's about people who are looking for a double return, not just financial, but also social. It's about looking for customers who are willing to pay a little bit more for a Be the Change t-shirt. I've got 7, for example. So it's that kind of thing.
We love Mars.
First of all, kudos to all of you. I'm Sam Friedman, and this question is to Oliver. It's interesting that you chose the schmutta business to go into, especially your background. But you also said that your investors, the like-minded investors, came from the U.S. And have you considered setting up a separate corporation in the U.S.? And if you would you consider, instead of structuring it the way you have here because of the existing formulas, consider a B corporation as opposed to a for-profit with giving 50% back?
Well, great question. We love the B Corporation, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with it, but we love what B Corp stands for. And we've actually worked with the help of Mars and with the help of SIG to become eligible for B Corp status in Canada. So technically we've passed and we've received B Corp's blessing. That said, in Canada, you have to change your articles of incorporation slightly, and that becomes a little bit more complicated in our case. So we haven't actually signed up, but we did go through the process. If we did incorporate in the US, we would certainly be interested in B Corp status, but we don't think it's something that's mutually exclusive from giving 50% of our profits back. In our case, part of our founding mission was to create a sustainable revenue stream for Free the Children. The 50% of profits back allows the charity to benefit proportionally as the business grows to what the business benefits.
Okay, thank you.
If people are interested in B Corps, we do have a white paper on the issue. It's on the Mars website. It's basically a benefit corporation, and it's a set of standards that you have to go through. There's 200 points, and you have to score at least 80 out of it. And it's a self-assessment, but there's a random audit that occurs with it. So I'm happy to talk to anybody about B Corp status on the break.
You talk a lot about the need to have clear identities for your corporation, clear goals. I was wondering, what for each of you defines a social innovator as opposed to just an innovator?
Go ahead,
It's really about being driven by something that has an impact on the community or the world that you live in, for me, and that may be oversimplifying it, but it's about the fact that, yes, people want to work. They want to have an income and make money, and there's no apology required, in my opinion, around that, but they also want to have an impact. Small scale, large scale, whatever the scope or focus may be, it has to be about having some kind of positive impact or change associated with it.
Christine, do you want to reflect on that?
Social innovator. I don't think anyone you set out to be innovative. I don't think that should be an end goal. And so to be socially innovative or a regular innovator, I'm not really sure that that's the goal. Again, as Amy had mentioned, it's really about what your motivations are. If your motivations are to solve a problem, to figure out how to make something more effective, to make a change, make something, disrupt the sector where, you're introducing something new that otherwise the sector hasn't seen before. I don't think your goal should be to go and cause trouble, but your goal should be to go and have a specific impact. And your impact in this case as a social entrepreneur is to create, added value into your sector. I'm not really sure if I answered your question, but I think it's really just, to say my goal is to be innovative is not,
it's more, how is your goal to be social, not innovative? You're being innovative.
Maybe you can.
The real question to ask yourself is, what do I care about? Mm-hmm. Once you identify what you care about, the rest will drive itself.
And I'm not sure in my mind that there's much of a difference between social innovator and innovator. Often most innovation has a social impact. I mean, penicillin was an accidental discovery with a tremendous social impact. So was that person a social innovator? Were they an innovator? Or were they just doing some research and something fortunate happened? So can you really, sometimes in a space that's fairly gray and fuzzy, it's not super easy to create clear-cut boxes and put things into them. And I think in this case, most innovation has a social impact. Hopefully it's positive, but I think some people identify themselves. I think social innovators are more focused on trying to find those social benefits But I'm not sure that in my mind there's much of a difference between a regular innovator and a social innovator.
Just fix your mic, it seems to be rubbing.
That was it. Sorry, guys.
And so you're in a convergence innovation center, which means that people are going to come in a whole bunch of different doors. That's how they're going to get into Mars. And, I like to tell the story about Pointerware. Is anybody from Pointerware here? So they came in with the technology. So these were computer scientists, and they came in with a flat screen technology, touch screen, and as they talked about it, as I'm listening to it, it was really, in my mind, about reducing social isolation. It was about enabling people to use a new form of technology. It was about enabling people to come together in a new way. That wasn't their mindset when they walked in. It was about the technology. In the convergence innovation model that we try to employ here, they were like, wow, now you're opening up a whole new market area for us. It was a whole new way of thinking. And their first contract was with a nursing home. And it was about, they sold it based on you get to keep engaged with your elderly parent in the community, or no matter where you are, through this technology. So that's, I think the lines are very fuzzy and becoming more so.
And if I can just add one more thing, I think it's very much in the eye of the beholder, because sometimes you set up to do something for some reason, and what the impact will be or how it will be received will be completely different. And so having conversations with the community that you work with or that you serve is really important, because they will tell you things and help you to see things from a perspective that you didn't have. So they're a really important piece of the puzzle in helping you to see what the social innovation and impact is.
Okay.
Hi, I'm an event planner, and I'm trying to approach things from a slightly different way. Corporations, generally speaking, are looking for events like sales meetings or conferences or what have you. They're looking at ROI. They're looking at the return on investment. If we're going to do this, we're expecting to see our sales staff perform at a higher level, what have you. What I'm attempting to do is tie the social responsibility that most corporations at least pay lip service to, where they have a pet charity or they contribute to the United Way and so forth. I'm trying to create something where it's a melding. It will be that double bottom line, where you can have a sales meeting or team building event that actually generates funds or generates some way of supporting your favorite charity. I'm wondering how the heck to market that to corporate. It's really sort of a, it's thinking, I hate the expression, but I'm going to use it anyways, thinking outside the box. Yeah. How do you get somebody who is thinking about the ROI to say, we always have a budget for our community support over here. How do I bring that in, basically getting me more money as an event planner, but me being able to provide something that's going to service that double bottom line.
Great. So, Christine, aren't you an event planner by training?
Yeah, previous to this, I did do event planning. You know what, I think it's really important to figure out what the goals of the specific events you're servicing. Now, when I did events, I was very particular, and I only worked with agencies because I only wanted to work with brands. And so maybe when you're looking to maybe you should look to partner with organizations that can help you deliver your mandate. So for example, maybe one of the agencies are also trying to incorporate in their campaign more environmentally friendly or using local goods as part of one of the catering services. So partnering with channels where they're able to kind of present your competitive edge, the differentiating factor as you as an event planner might be very useful. When I was going to events, that was a pretty big advantage. To go straight to a corporation to tell them, this is your social mandate, I match your social mandate, but use my event services, I think will be very, very challenging. And like you said, a lot of the events, they do want to measure some sort of ROI. So finding a way to match that with their end goals, because at the end of the day, they do provide reports, and a lot of them will tell you, oh, we had this many hours of volunteering, this many dollars raised, this many things. So maybe if you can provide a better alternative to what they're currently doing, then that might be a good channel.
I didn't quite understand about partnering with agencies. You mean like the say, partnering with the United Way?
For example, like a corporation will usually have an agency that does their marketing or their print material.
Okay.
And part of that is they actually outsource some of their events as well. And so those events could be made internally for some of their staff members, like their sales, but it could be for external, for their customers as well. So that would be a way for an organization to put on events, but they're not actually put on by internally. They use outside contractors, and then maybe one of the ad agencies might be a good channel partner for you.
Thank you.
The only thing I might add is we sell to companies, and we have to convince them to buy a premium product and that it's going to be good for them in the long run. You're saying that one of the challenges you have is they talk about it in return on investment. I would tend to say that it's a lot harder to get people to shift how they think than to take what you're trying to sell and try to put it into their paradigm. So in this case, I would take some of those extras that you provide and try to tie them to ROI or an equivalent metric. So in our case, we try to explain to people that, yes, you're spending in percentage terms, quite a bit more, but in absolute dollar terms, you're spending a tiny fraction more for this product. And here are specific examples of the impact it's had on employees, on managers. So we create sales tools for our sales team by very actively communicating with our existing clients and finding out how the products do well. So tell us, one of the operators in Newfoundland picked up a call from one of our team that was trying to negotiate down a roaming rate charge and actually knew what the product was. We asked for their name. We asked if he would mind if we referred to him, gave him a glowing referral. We called the head of sustainability back and said, by the way, just so you know, we just had this conversation. It's been recorded. FYI, the shirts you chose to spend a little extra on, the guy in Newfoundland knows all about the program and loves TELUS for it and just discounted a roaming charge by 50%. So those stories are really valuable, and I think whatever clients you work with that you convince to take a chance on you, you have to capture the benefits they have, get them on the record, and then use those to convince others. I don't know if that's helpful.
I think part of the problem is that there are, they see the CSR as very different than they do from the marketing or from other kinds of things, and it's about getting them to think in an integrated way. It's a challenge, but it can be done, for sure. Hi.
Just a quick question. Amy and Allyson, you mentioned a website that I didn't quite catch, in which you get 10 free licenses.
Oh, Salesforce.com.
Can you say that again?
Salesforce.com.
Got it, thank you.
Yeah, it's great because it allows you to not only have a very well-organized database of your current clients, but also potential clients and the current opportunities that are available to you in your funnel, and it helps you to see where you're at, where you may be going, and where your needs are. So it's got a lot of functionality in there that you can leverage and customize.
So we're going to take these last two questions, and then we're going to invite you to come out and join us for some networking. So,
quick question. I just want to ask you to go back into memory. After 90 days in a business, what kept you going?
For me?
Your funding was gone, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak specifically to that time because I wasn't with the organization at that point, but I'll tell you what keeps me going at this point, if it's any help. For me, it's passion for the work that we do, and it's passion for the people that we work with. And that includes not only our staff and freelancers that we work with, but the clients we work with as well. We work with great people, and we have a shared interest in the topics that we address, and we work collaboratively with them. One of the pieces of work that we have had to do, and this has been a bit of an uphill climb admittedly, is helping our clients to see that we are co-creating with them. And that has been a big process that we've worked on internally and externally with people, because we are not just sort of, the client saying to us, I need you to do ABC, and we come back and say, here's ABC. That's not what we do. And I think a lot of organizations are in that boat of saying, we want to work with you. And so what drives me is we do things that surprise me all the time. People I work with, clients I work with, do things that surprise me all the time, and it's fun. And if it isn't fun, and if you don't care, you won't keep going. So you really have to care about what you're doing. And for me personally, you have to care about the people that you work with, because they will continue to inspire and drive drive you and make you do things like learn about Salesforce.com, which I never thought I would. But it's because the thing that keeps me up at night is making sure that I can continue to create great opportunities for people to do great work, and that drives me forward.
Sir, last question.
Hello. I'm sort of here by accident. Just like a lot of people here, I started out selling software. Actually, I sold a software of a competitor for Salesforce.com.
Sorry.
But I also slipped into advocacy after a certain point, and I'm affiliated with a small not-for-profit, and we advocate things. And what happens if you're in a small not-for-profit that has a little bit of cash flow, but not really enough to do anything wonderful, and you don't quite know what to sell?
Well, so this is in terms of looking for revenue-generating opportunities within.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
I'd be happy to suggest that you buy clothing at wholesale prices and resell them at retail. But of course, that might seem like shameless self-promotion, so I'll pass the question on to Christine.
I would have to say, I don't think you should start a business if the goal is just to have some money and to start a social enterprise, because that won't be a good enough reason for you to have the client that you need to service that product. That's my advice. I wouldn't necessarily partner a nonprofit and say, oh, let's start a social enterprise because we want to generate more money, because starting a business is not a small on-the-side task. So you'll actually be putting a lot more resources in at the beginning to actually make it run. And if it doesn't happen, you've actually lost a lot of the funds that you originally might have had. So if you are looking to do that, maybe it might be in good interest to maybe partner with another nonprofit to see if they would be looking to some kind of partnership in terms of social enterprise. But I don't really feel, I just want to, my personal view is don't go out and start a business just because you're a nonprofit and you're trying to look for a new revenue stream, because I think you can lose a lot of funds that way if you don't go into the business for the right reason. For me to it was very strategic, and that was very, they put the team together and they really knew. And if you're looking for new ways to be able to create a new revenue stream, there's alternate fundraising opportunities, but that doesn't mean you need to start a business and invest in inventory or do something along those lines. There are different venues, I think.
Amy, do you want to say anything?
I would echo the comments of the group here, and I would say one of the things that's really important in setting up your business in whatever format you choose to do so and growing it over time is around integrity. And I'm not just talking about personal integrity, I'm talking about integrity of the business, so that everybody who is working there, talking about it, has the message, has the spirit of the message. And so that has to be very clearly articulated for people and very clearly integrated in their own sense of what the organization or the business is. And so if you don't have that, it's going to be really tricky, because you will need to talk with and network with many, many people, and it has to have integrity around consistency of messaging and feeling like something that makes sense. So I would focus energy on that, find something that lands for you in terms of that integrity, and then really put the effort into getting clear on what that is before you go out and start driving something forward.
Great. And my shameless self-promotion is come and talk to us at SIG, and we'll help you look at what are some fundraising opportunities, and whether or not a social enterprise or revenue generating is right for you. It's certainly not right for everyone. Partnership opportunities too. We could do some market research for you and let you know who are some appropriate groups you might want to consider partnering with. So that's how I'd approach that. You guys were an amazing audience. I had a ton of questions, didn't get to ask any of them. I am so appreciative of your engagement with this group, and please do stick around. And before you do that, join me in congratulating our panel for a really great job.